Rhino, Fusion 360, AutoCAD, they are all known for great snapping and precision movement. And who knew that Blender was about to join that with this add-on? What's up? I'm Jonathan and welcome to Maker Tales, where I'm sharing my maker journey to help you go further in yours. So don't forget to subscribe and hit that little bell icon to never miss an opportunity to keep making. This video is all about a Blender add-on called Cad Transforms, which has just had an update to the 0.08 build. And I have to say, they've got rid of almost every single gripe that I had and then added some more features on top. Now Blender is 0.00001 millimeter margin of error. I think I can start doing precision modeling with it. So let's go over the action plan, as there is quite a bit to cover here. Now, I don't want to go super quick, but I am going to keep a pretty decent pace through this all. So I'm going to be showing you how to download, installing, and the overall UI setup, as well as how I currently have the UI set up for my build. And then from there, we will cover the basics, along with a little few extras near the end of the basics. And then I will cover what I call advanced techniques. They're not really advanced techniques. They're just techniques of how to use the add-on that might not be inherently obvious. And of course, if I'm going too quick or too slow, feel free to use YouTube's little cog down there to be able to speed up or slow this down. And I have gone ahead and chaptered up this whole video so you can just jump in and out from section to section, so you really only grasp the techniques that you really want to understand. Like any great Blender add-on, it begins its journey outside of Blender. So to download this add-on, we need to head over to Stefan Ledger's Gumroad page. Once here, you will see a couple of other great add-ons by him, along with Cad Transforms for Blender. Now here's where you can download it, and you can get it for free, but please, 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 he's created something incredible here, so even €1 goes a long way. I personally have given him 25, and I'll probably even give him more just due to the sheer amount of time and effort that this has saved me. Once downloaded, it's just as simple to install. Head over to Edit, Preferences, go into your add-ons and hit the install button, go to the file path where you've downloaded it, and then hit the check mark once it's installed. While we're here, I might as well show you how I currently have this set up, along with a couple of points of notice that I should let you know. So one of them is this here, which is snap to loose geometry. This is a setting you might want to turn off if you're working with very big meshes, as it can get a little bit laggy if this is turned on. As well as default scale 1D, all this will make sense later on. And here you can see a whole bunch of text settings, color settings, size settings, as well as all the shortcuts that are involved. That you can change them all, but I feel that currently they're set really well. And also this one here of use numpad as navigation. That will make sense later on. So I'm going to change my text color to a bright pink, my font size to 100, this circle radius to 15, my snap widget lines to a 5, my ruler thickness, I think 6 is the one that I go with, and this to 3. Cad Transforms is a little bit unique in the way that it's activated. As you can see, on the right-hand tool shelf, there is nothing here that says Cad Transforms, apart from this option transform menu here. But apart from that, there is nothing. That's because you have to activate Cad Transform by clicking this new little button that you've got here on the left-hand side. So once you click this button, that is Cad Transforms activated, and you will see that there is a new top toolbar. Your active tool has the same toolbar, and on the right hand side, your active tool toolbar workspace settings is also there. So there's 3 different locations to work with Cad Transforms. Now the main way that you're going to be working with Cad Transforms is with this huge list of shortcuts. Don't worry, they're very easy to remember, because V is vertex, E is edge, Shift E is edge center, so on and so forth. A couple special mentions is H for X-ray and spacebar to clear snapping points, and I will show you those in action later on. But before we go into the absolute basics, I want to show you that this currently does not have a shortcut. It might say that it has GRS shortcut, however, if we go and click our selection box and if we go G, this is not going to activate CAD transforms. So me personally, I go ahead and right click and I assign a shortcut and I set Alt-C. If you're uncomfortable assigning a shortcut such as Alt-C, remember there's always the quick menu by right-clicking and add to quick favorites, which means that when you press Q, you will have your quick menu favorites and you will have CAD transforms in there. If you really wanted to boil down CAD transforms to that very basics, it's a snap from and snap to any. This is for all the operations: move, scale, and rotate. So let's go ahead and let's click our red cube here. Let's hit G to activate move, and you can see that it isn't moving like normal Blender. However, if I go over any vertex, because we have our vertex selection currently enabled, we are now going to select a from snap point. So let's select one, and now we can move the cube. So this is our from and to, because currently we have our vertex selected, we can snap to any vertex. If we were to hit E, that could be an edge. If I'm to hit E once again, that turns off edge. I can turn on F and E, so now we have faces and edges. And if I wanted to turn them all off, I hit spacebar, and now I can select another one. So let's go for face centers with Shift F, and I'm going to go for the face center of this cube here. All I'm going to do is left click, and that's it in place now. Now this works for scale as well, so this is very similar to Blender default. So let's go scale on the X, and we now have our little drag here. Let's go, instead of face centers, let's go for vertex, and let's go for the vertex right here. So now we've just scale snapped to that vertex over there, and that works for rotation as well. So let's click this one, hit R, let's go in the Z, and we are now rotating the Z, and let's do a snap rotation to this vertex over there. So that there is the snap from and snap to any. And really do keep in mind that this any is a big emphasis, as you can almost combine these to get some really crazy snapping points, which I will show you later on. Something that I find incredible that isn't default within Blender is Viewport Movement. Now, you might be a little bit confused what I mean by that. Well, what I mean by that is while in operation. So let's select a cube, hit G, hit an origin point to move our cube, and now, usually in Blender, we wouldn't be able to move our view at all. However, here, we can now, holding down the middle mouse button, we can go and rotate around. Holding down Shift and middle mouse, we can pan around, and we can still zoom around while we're in the middle of any operation, be it a move, be it a scale operation right this minute. We can go and just say, actually, you know what? I want that to be on an edge center over here. And let's say this rotation here, rotating on the Z once again, I want to make sure that I'm picking this vertex right here. So viewport movement while in operation is incredibly valuable, and I cannot believe that this isn't something that is default within Blender. As you have seen so far, CAD Transforms is quite like default Blender. So we've got what I like to call the quick transform options, which is when you select an object. Let's do a scale on this one, so we're going to hit S, and we're going for the Y this time. It's exactly like default Blender, except you get these numbers on the right hand side, and you can do scale snapping points. This is the same with rotation. We can do scale snapping points on everything like that. And with movement, unfortunately, if you were to just go G and X, you have to pick an origin point of where this move location is going to be. If you want it to be the origin, remember that there is an origin snap right here. And so we would go G, let's go O to turn that on, and now we can do origin movement, and there you have it. So that is the quick transforms. Something that I do want to quickly say about this that isn't innately like default Blender is there is auto apply on scale. So let's go ahead and with our little scale cube here, let's just give it a little bevel. So let's go click this bevel. Let's give it a couple of segments here. There we go. Let's go and look straight at our object. So now within default Blender, if we were to scale and not apply our edge, would go a little bit weird. However, here within CAD, Let's go and hit S. Let's go on the Y once again. You will see it will go weird, but as soon as I go left click, it is auto applied. So that's one bit of information to keep in mind, that CAD Transforms does auto apply your scale. So everything will always stay at 1 on the scale. As you've seen with the move operation, we have arbitrary origin and pivot points. So let me just show you what I mean by this. So let's go ahead and do G for moving. And instead of doing a vertex, let's say we're wanting to move something from an edge center. So let's turn off the vertex, turn off origin. Let's go Shift E. And here we have an edge center and we're moving it from here. And right there, that is our origin point while we're doing that motion. Now we can do the same for scale. So let's hit the scale, hit S, and let's say we're going from the middle of this point to over to the vertex on here, and there we have our scale point. However, what I would say is usually your best way to using scale is going ahead and hit scale. Let's go and just do vertex. We hit an origin point of our scale, and now you'll see that we have this axis or the plane setting. So I'm going to hit that vertex there, and then that's the way it's done. Just keep in mind that you cannot go into the minus when an origin point like this has been set. And this also works with rotation. So let's go ahead and let's set a rotation from, I don't know, let's go for the edge center over here. So let's go R, Shift E. So we're going from our edge center to this edge center, and you can see now we're rotating from our edge centers as our pivot point. While we're at arbitrary origin points, I think I should show you the quickest way to set up both a scale and a rotation one. So with our CAD Transform on, let's go ahead and do a scale movement. So let's go scale. I'm going to turn everything off, go edge, and now with one click I can set my scale. You can see that little red circle. That red circle is going to be the origin of the scale. So then when I click this, that's it already set. So I don't have to set that custom plane every single time. So once again, if I went scale, and this time I'll say go with this edge over here, that's that done that way. You can do the same with rotation by hitting R, setting this here. It's going to use that as the origin point. Usually it uses X as its default, so you can hit Z to go into Z rotation, or Y to go into the Y rotation. Just showing that once again, going R, and then we'll set this one here, and like that you can set up these custom axes of rotation without having to go every single time setting up from this point to that point. A great little thing that comes with CAD Transforms is Incremental Transform. So let's go ahead and do a move like we're currently doing, and I'm going to just go ahead and constrain this on the X by hitting X, and you can see we have our numbers there on the right hand side. If I hold down Alt, you will see that we jump every 0.5, and if I hold down Alt and Shift, we will go every 0.1 millimeters as well. So that there is Incremental Transform in the move. You have the same for scale, so let's set this up here. Right this minute it is set up in percentage, so we can see here it's every 5%, and you can also do it by every whole percentage by holding down Shift. If those weren't selected, you will see that we get 0.22, 0.17 and all that. And you have the same for rotation. So let's go R, let's select this little rotation point here. Let's hold down Alt, and you'll see it is every 5 degrees of rotation, or you can do it by every whole degree by holding down Shift. To go along with that incremental transform, you can see that we have unit input and unit definition for all operations. So let's go ahead, let's hit here, let's go for our G like we're usually doing. Let's move from this vertex here, let's snap it to the Y this time. You can see we've got this millimeters. Now let's say I want this to go 1 millimeter. Well, all I have to do is hit 1. So that's going 1 millimeter. My mouse is now no longer active. If I wanted my mouse to be active again, I hit escape to cancel that movement and go back to mouse definition. So let's go for 1.5 millimeters. And you know what? I didn't mean to say 1.5 millimeters. I wanted to be that let's say 1.5 inches. So let's go ahead and set that to inch, and there you go. I've gone and just added an inch, and that's given me 1.5 inches. So let's go back, let's take that away, and let's say I wanted that to be 1 foot. So let's put in FT, and that's now 1 foot away. So as you can see, definition and unit input. You hit enter to say yes and confirm your unit input. This also works for scale. So let's go and hit S, our origin and our axis. And let's say we're wanting that to be 3. And that, as you can see right this minute, that is 3 times on the percentage. Don't worry, I will show you how to change it this way too. You can hit M, and then that's going to give us 3 meters. Let's go MM, and that gives us 3 millimeters right here. So you can do this by just percentage, by removing the unit definition, or you can put in a unit definition and it will hold that there. There's the same with rotation. So let's go R, and let's put in an input of 15, and if you want it the other way around, you can go minus. I don't really know if there's any other thing like minutes, but I haven't really tested that out because I don't really know how to put in minute degree into rotation. But as you can see, you have input right there, and hitting enter will confirm your input. Just before we move on from unit input, there's a couple more things to keep in mind. One thing is that you can mix unit input with snapping. So let's go do a scale, hit the edge, say this edge here, turn off edge snapping, and now we've just got the vertex snapping. And here we can put in -1 millimeter. So hitting enter, that gives me snapping to this vertex with -1 millimeter. And as you can tell, that there was an equation, which is another thing you can do. So let's go ahead and do a move from this vertex on the X. And what I want to show is that you can do equations, not only simple equations like 3 minus 1, but you can mix units. So let's say 1 centimeter minus 1 millimeter will give us 9 millimeters. And you can do this, say, let's do an example here. Let's go G, move, this time on the Y, so it goes in the distance. And let's say 1 foot minus 30 centimeters. And there you have it. So you can mix in the unit definition and equations all together to get some very interesting results. As you've already seen, we do have our normal local, global, and freeform snapping and grid here. Now let me just show you a little bit in more detail what I want to show here. So I'm going to turn on our origin point. I'm going to hit G. I'm going to select this origin here. And so we can go ahead and just hit X, and we're going to be constrained to the X, Y for the Y, Z for the Z. And we can also go Shift Z, and that will give us our constraint of our X and Y. Now, if we wanted to see the grid that this was currently constrained to, we just have to hit G. And this will show us our current grid that we're constrained to. So hitting G, cancel that, and that works for, once again, all of them. So let's go and give this a really strange scale. Let's make this a diagonal scale. So let's hit S. We're going to go from the vertex here to there, and I want to see this grid that I'm scaling on. So going G, and you can see our grid right there. And let's just quickly show that we do have our local here. So I'm going to go into the normal Blender rotation, just go for a random rotation degree here. And now let's go back into our Cad transforms. Let's go and hit R, and now you can straight away see our new plane has been set there. If we were to hit X, you can see our other plane is shown. If we hit X again, you can see our other plane is shown. So that there is local, global, and freeform grids and constraints. To go with our unit input and constraints, we have something called stacked transforms. So let me show you this in action. If I were to click a cube hit G for move, select its origin point, and say Y. I can then go Y, let's set that to 1.5, and then I can also say, actually, and on top of that, go X, let's say -3, and then hit enter, and there we have it, a stacked movement of the Y and X. And this applies for everything. So let's go for a scale here. Let's go S for scaling, pick our origin and location. Let's go ahead and let's say on the Y, I want this to go 2, and on the X, I want this to go 3, and hit enter, and there you have it. And as well with rotation, so let's go ahead, let's just hit R, let's pick this axis right here, and let's say on the Z of this axis, I want to go 45, and on the Y of this, I want to go 45. I hit enter, and there you have it. That is stacked transforms for move, scale, and rotate. Something that many CAD users are used to is something called soft constraints. So as you've seen, it's very easy to go ahead and click our red cube, hit G, set our origin point, and move from there. However, you can do this to anything. It doesn't only have to be the active object. So what I mean by soft constraint is I'm wanting to move the distance of this edge here. So let's go ahead, hit G. I'm going to set this to be my origin point, and I can now soft constrain it to the other edge over here. And this also works for scale. So let's go and hit S, say this is our origin, and there, and we're actually wanting to scale all the way to there. As you can see, we do get some strange effects with scale, but that's because we're scaling the distance from the object as well. This works for rotation as well. So if we wanted, select here, hit R, we're going to go and say from this edge to here, and we're rotating it to the 45 degree of that cube. And there you have it. That is soft constraints for move, scale, and rotate. To go along with our soft constraints, we have precision soft constraints, or what I like to call edge precision soft constraints. So let's go ahead and move this cube here by hitting G, and let's go and set this vertex here, and we're wanting to move along this edge here, let's say 0.5 of a millimeter. Now keep in mind that these cubes are only 2 millimeters in size. So I'm going to hit E, and now you can see we have this little red circle that gets selected when I go past the center point. This is the origin point of what I'm about to put in. So now if I put in 0.5, it's going to go 0.5 movement from the origin point. I hit enter to confirm, and there you have it. Now this is also the same for scale, so let's go ahead. Let's hit our S for scale, pick our origin, pick our vertex, say this edge, and I'm wanting to go only, let's say to the, not to the middle, let's go right over here, so that's 1.5. So 1.5, and there you have it, 1.5 millimeters along the edge of our red cube, hit enter, and there you have it. Unfortunately, rotation doesn't have this type of snapping, and it might be something that gets added, but I'm not sure. What rotation does still have is the snapping points as always. So rotation, go ahead here, and we've got all our snapping points that we can just set to go with. Something that's quite interesting and powerful to play about with is the ability to create custom constraints. Now this is only supported with the move operation because quite frankly in the scale and the rotation operation you are creating custom constraints. So right this minute let's just set some random rotation amount on the Y. Let's go for something like that, and I want to show you that there's two ways to create a custom constraint. One that is you're snapping your from point to the constraint, and the other one is your move point is the constraint itself. So let's do first the manual way. So let's go and hit G, and let's hit our vertex for our move from operation. Let's hit C for custom constraint. And now what we're doing is clicking the origin of the constraint and then the axis that we're wanting to go along with. And that there is the custom constraint created. So now we can click our move from, hit X, and you'll see that we're now snapped to our constraint that we've just set. We can hit G to see this grid of our custom constraint, and G once again to hide it. And that's how you can create a constraint that moves along that axis. Of course, you can now hit Y to move along the Y of that axis and so on and so forth. So let's undo that and let me show you the other way of creating a constraint. So we're going to hit G. Now we're going to go straight to hit C, and with edge snapping selected, you will see that we can create a constraint along this edge. Again, that little red circle that appears on either side, that is the origin point, so to speak, of this constraint. So let's hit here, and this time, instead of saying where the move from is, the move from is this edge. So it is constrained to this axis. And like any other axis that you can set, you can say, let's go Shift Z, and now we're moving along the Y and X plane of this custom plane. So if we hit G, you will see the grid that has been created, and that's how you're able to move not just along that plane that you created of the X, but sort of perpendicular or parallel to the plane. A great little feature is plane intersection, and this can work with custom planes for the move. Now, there is no such thing as plane intersection for rotation, because quite frankly, that is how rotation works. Like, whenever it intersects an object, that is when it is going to go and snap to. You can't set a plane intersection along this edge because, well, there's nothing really to intersect, because that's the way the planes work. However, let's go ahead and rotate this cube so that it's something along like that. So technically speaking, this should be a plane intersection around there, so to speak. So how would this go about? Well, first we'll do it without the custom plane. So let's hit G. Let's set this here as our origin point. Let's hit Y, and as you see, we have our Y constrained here. Now, to do a plane intersection, we have to get something like an edge or a face. So let's hit F for face, and right there you have it. That is now snapped to the intersection point of that face. And that is how the intersections work. Now let's go ahead and do a custom plane. Now, something that I've realized that doesn't quite work is if you went and did this, and let's say we're going to go and hit C to create our custom plane. Let's create our custom plane from here and this direction here. So we should have an intersection somewhere around here. And now if we go and click this vertex here as our origin point, if we hit X, we're constrained to that X. And because we have face selected, you can see that we're snapping to the intersection point here. However, if you were to now go ahead and do the same as we just did before by hitting Y to go into our local constraint and then did our snapping constraint, we have some strange behavior here, because what it's actually doing is using our custom constraint as the origin point for the Y, so it wouldn't actually work quite as intended. So if you're wanting to use the global axis as the constraint, so to speak, don't bother creating a custom constraint, because that would just throw things off. So there you go, that is some custom constraints right there and intersection points. Let's just undo that and show you that with the scale now. So let's go and hit S. Let's go from here to there, and now we're scaling. So we know that we can just, we're basically snapping to points, but if we go ahead here, and it looks like we're snapping right to where this would be. But as you can see, the constraint is just 105 degrees from our 105% is where the intersection point of that face is for this scale. So there it is. That is planes of intersection for scale and movement. We also have perpendicular snapping. So just to make a good demonstration, let's just go ahead and rotate this at some random degree this way, and rotate this some random degree that way. And let's select our red cube. Let's go and G for move, select our vertex here, and if you hit P, you will see that up on the top left, perpendicular has been clicked. I'm going to turn off V for vertex, so we only have perpendicular. So this will now, whenever I go over an edge, it's going to move perpendicular to that location. As you can see, some lines also get drawn out, and this is how we do perpendicular movement with movement. Now I will go ahead and show you this with the scale as well. So let's hit our blue cube here, hit scale, let's go and set it up on the vertex, turn off our perpendicular from here to there, turn our perpendicular back on, turn off our vertex, and now we can see we're doing perpendicular snapping to different edges. And let's also do that for rotation very quickly. So let's go here, go R, and turn off our perpendicular. Vertex, turn on our rotation where we're wanting to go. Go P for perpendicular, and turn off our vertex, and you will see our perpendicular snapping so that we're perpendicular to different angles that are set very quickly. We can just say, oh, go perpendicular to that edge, or this random edge here, and that there. You will see that we've now set a perpendicular to that edge right there. So that's perpendicular snapping. Just before we move on from perpendicular snapping, I also want to show you that you can constrain this perpendicular snapping to an axis. So this could be a custom plane as well. So let me just go ahead and let's hit G. Let's move from a vertex, this vertex, constrain it to the Y. And you'll see that we have our constraint going. Let's hit P for our perpendicular. So right this minute, we're going perpendicular to this edge. And as you see, because we are constrained to the Y, it's staying down there. However, if I turned off that, when I would be perpendicular to it, I would be up to that level, perpendicular speaking. Or if I hit Y, you will see that it will constrain it down to the ground. To go with intersections and perpendicular, we also have parallel snapping. So to show this off, I'm going to set a couple of random rotations here. So let me just go ahead and do that now. So we've got this here. Let's go for that there. And let's put this one that way. So let's start first with our move operation. So if we go G, we select our vertex we're wanting to move. If we hit P, we've got our perpendicular. Now if we hit P again, we have parallel. So now it will move parallel to our edges. Now what parallel really does is if we're wanting to move parallel to this edge, you now put in, I don't know, 4 millimeters, and that's it moved parallel to that edge using that from point 4 millimeters. Now when it comes to scale, parallel's a little bit different, in the sense that what it's really doing is just taking in the size, so to speak. So if I go and put in parallel, instead of being parallel, it takes in this dimension here as an input for what the scale size should be. So because these are all the same size, you can't really tell. So just let's go and set this one to a nice long length. And now let's say, we're using the scale, we're going along this edge, and we want these two to be the same length. Well, with parallel, it picks in the same scale length right there. But one of the ones that I find is most useful is with rotation. So let's go with the rotation here. Let's set our axis up. And now when we go P and P for parallel, we can tell it to go parallel to this edge, go parallel to that edge, to any edge we want to pick. It's a really quick and simple way to set a rotation parallel to one another. And just before we go into the extras of this add-on, I need to say that everything I've just shown you is also edit mode compatible. So if we go ahead and let's select our cubes here, go into edit mode, you can see that we can go and go vertex select. Let's select, I don't know, these two vertices here, turn on our CAD, because you have to return it on. Remember that the shortcut will have to be reassigned as well. And now let's turn off let's go hit G to do our movement. Let's turn off our parallel. Let's go vertex snapping, and let's say I'm wanting to snap this to the face center of that. All right, so Shift F, and now we're snapping to the face center. This is just a very quick thing to show you, but it is completely doable and possible everything that I've just shown you in all those examples is possible in edit mode with all your vertices, edges, and faces. Do keep in mind the following though. If an object is not within edit mode, it's not going to be doing the snap operation, so to speak. So if I go ahead here, I go G, and I tell it to move here to that face center, it's not going to move to that face center or any vertex, as this other cube that I'm trying to snap to is not in edit mode. However, if I were to bring them both into edit mode, you will see that I will then be able to snap to it. Also, keep in mind the following, which is if we go ahead and delete a whole bunch of vertices here. So let's go into our selection, select all this here, and actually not that much. Let's go for these there. That this here is also possible in this new update, being able to move around edges and single vertices using the add-on. Just be aware that it does use a lot of computing power to do this. So let's just show this in action. So with that selected, let me make sure that I hit G to select the vertex, and you can see that I can now snap this along. Now if you have a giant mesh that you're working with, in edit mode, in preferences, right here you have snap to loose geometry. You might want to turn this off if you have a good 100,000, 3 million, or 8 million vertices just floating about to get rid of, as it will bring your computer to a crawl due to how intensive this is to find these floating loose geometry of vertices and edges. Now we're going to move on to some of the extras, things that are also compatible with this add-on, along with a couple of hidden little features that might not be so obvious. So to start off with, in the extras, we have 1D, 2D, and 3D scaling. And like I mentioned before, there is no negative transform in scaling. So let's go ahead, hit our red cube, hit S, our origin point, and our axis, and we have our 1D scaling here. If I hit tab, we now have 2D scaling, and if I hit tab again, we have 3D scaling. Now, of course, I can always just say I want this to be 5 millimeters, and there we go. We have now snapped in 3-dimensional 5 millimeters to do scaling up. This is extremely useful if you're trying to scale up DXFs or vector files that you've imported, because now when you hit enter, remember that scaling gets automatically applied in object mode, so you don't even have to worry about that. As I mentioned right at the start, I was going to show you what this absolute scale is. So right this minute, when we go ahead and do our scaling, you can see that by default on the Alt, it's going to snap to the percentage scaling. So what is absolute scaling? Absolute scaling, here in the option, we're going to turn it on, absolute scaling, and what it's going to do is instead of snapping to the percentage, it's going to snap to the distance. Cad Transforms is also compatible with only parent. So if we were to select these two to be the parent here, we now have this as our parent. And if we go into our options transforms, this is a Blender default, but the add-on is compatible with it. So let's go parents only. Let's select our parent here, hit G, and let's do our movements. And as you can see, this is parent only movement. If we had parent only off and we then did G, you would see that this would move the children as well. Along with only parent, it's also compatible with only location to some really interesting effects. So if we were to go here, imagine you can have all your snapping controls with working only with the location. One of the best examples of this is with rotation. So I'm going to hit R for rotation. I'm going to set the rotation to this here, and you can see now some really interesting results with only location turned on. And lastly, to go with only locations and only parent is only origin. So let's turn on only origin, and right here you can see that we can now move our origin point using our current new little program. So let's turn on O for origin snapping, and now we have our origin, so we can set this anywhere we want. One of my favorite ones is Shift F for face centers, so you can set it to the face center of the base, and there you have it. Keep in mind, this doesn't have to be done only with origin, so that can be turned off, is that you can now do something very interesting in edit mode. So we can go into edit mode, let's select this object here, and let's say we wanted to move things to our origin point by snapping to it. We can select all our edges here, hit G, let's go in from that vertex to that origin point there, or if we wanted to, we can go G, and instead we're going from our face center to our origin point as well. So you can go ahead and set your origin point inside of edit mode using CAD transforms. And while we're pointing out things that are also compatible with CAD transforms, auto merge vertices is also compatible. Let's go ahead, hit tab into edit mode, select some vertices right here, make sure that our auto merge is turned on, and now when we go ahead and do our movement, so let's go here to there, you can see now if I go and do G and move, we have now gone and auto merged. Something to keep in mind is that CAD Transforms does not support currently the mirror option. One of the things that might not be inherently obvious of CAD Transforms is that it has curve support. So as you see, we have our curves right here. Let's turn on our CAD Transforms, hit G, we can snap to a vertex and then snap it to a center, and this is also available within edit mode itself. So let's go into edit mode, let's go into top view, let's select one of our vertices here, let's hit G, snap to there, and go to the middle point here, and there you have it. So curve support within edit mode and in object mode. Keep in mind that this is one of the ones that I haven't used that much, so if there are some hidden little things that I don't know, this would probably be the one. Something to keep in mind is the actual custom adaptive grid. So what I mean by that is our custom plane. So if I go ahead and I hit G, and we're going to go and snap to our top vertex here, and then we're going to constrain it off the X we'll have here. So let's hit G for our plane. As we get closer, you'll see that there's more detail to our grid, so it's an adaptive grid. However, in perspective, we have a bit of a problem there. However, if we go into the top view and then we start scaling down, you will see that it gets more and more and more and more detailed. So that is the custom adaptive grid. Lastly, just before we go into some advanced use cases, we have something called smart/memory move, or averaging. Many CAD users are probably used to this, but let's go ahead and show you what I mean. If we hit G and we hit this vertex here, we are now moving around here. Now, let's say I wanted to find the exact middle distance between these 2 points. What I can do is go over this vertex, hit A to bring that point into memory, go over to our next point, and there you go. That is our average between those 2 points. I hit click to confirm it, and there you have it. Now I can also do this by a third, by going G, selecting our vertex, going A once and now A twice, and there we have it. 1/3 has been moved along that distance. And just a small reminder that all of this is completely possible in edit mode as well. So if we went into vertex select, selected this vertex here, go G, so we have this here, we can actually go A to put that point into memory, and then because we're over here, now when we click, we're now in the average between those 2 points. So just keep in mind that I am currently learning this add-on just as much as you, but I have found a couple of advanced use cases, so to speak, that I think would be very interesting to share with you. So without any further ado, let's go into these little advanced techniques. First one is stacked constraints. Now, there are many different stacking options here, many of which I haven't even played around with, but I'm sure there are even more. So let's go ahead and show you an example. So this is a normal to a face center. So I'm going to go select this cube here, hit G, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go for the face center of this base. Okay, brilliant. So now I can snap to the face centers of these. And now if I hit N for normal, what I can do is go onto the face center, hit 1 to go up 1 millimeter from the face center of that normal that I just snapped to. Something I would like you to keep in mind is how custom constraints are set up, and it's different for vertices, normals, and edges, and in scale, move, and rotation. So let's go ahead, select our cube here, hit G for moving, and now we know that we can click our origin point. Let's hit C to set up a custom constraint. And what we can do is click where this constraint is. Now we can go Shift Z and constrain our Z to the global z-axis right here. So now we're only moving our x and y. So that is one thing to keep in mind that you can do with the move constraint custom creation. Now with scale, custom constraint, as you know, there isn't such thing, but as you've seen, I just want to make sure that you understand when we're hitting S and setting this up right now, we're setting up a custom constraint right now. So it's best to set up an origin point, go along an edge, and that is a custom constraint set up. The same with rotation, which is R. We can now set up our custom constraint. We can also go Shift Z here and constrain our Z upwards and do our rotation in some weird other direction. So that there is with vertices, and with normals it's slightly different, because if we were to go ahead and hit G now for moving, making sure that our normal is turned on, we now have straight away, if I go to hit C for a custom constraint, it's going to be using our normal as our z-axis. So that means it already has an idea what our axis that we're setting for our custom constraint is going to be. So I'm going to go and select face center here, and now when I click, that is our custom constraint created using our normal as our z. So I will do that once again. If I go G and our normal is set and I hit C, it's going to use our normal as our constraint for the z of our custom constraint. This is the same for edges. It will use the edge as our z. This also applies within scale and rotation. Lastly, let's go about doing face-to-face with normals. Now, I've shown you something like this before, but I was very specific in the way that I showed you it. So what I'm wanting to do right this minute is just quickly create a Suzanne right here, because this is something that's going to be best shown with basically a mesh that isn't so easy to be seen. So we have our mesh right here, Suzanne. So let's go ahead and go with a G for the moving of Suzanne from her origin point. So let's turn off vertices from her origin point. Perfect. Now I'm going to go face centers and normals, turn off origin point, and you can see how Suzanne is snapping to these face centers. Now, something that's quite interesting is that you can constrain this itself. So if we go to this face normal here, we can go Shift Z or Shift X to change the constraining axis of the normal. So right this minute, if we go Shift Y, you can see that we're constrained inwards. That's because currently we're using the normal as our custom constraint. So let's go and fix this. So let's undo this movement here of Suzanne, and let's set up a custom constraint while we're setting up Suzanne. So let's go ahead, hit G, let's go hit C for custom constraint. Now let's hit our O for origin point. So we're going from the origin point. So now we're going to set up this custom constraint. Let's go to the vertex there in the center. So let's go V and let's snap to that vertex. So a custom constraint has been set. And now we'll turn off that, go from the origin point once again. So now we're moving Suzanne from the origin point, turn off the origin point, go to face centers and normals. And now you can see that when we go Shift Z or Shift X, we're now snapping with her facing outwards. This is because we set a custom constraint for her local, and this is very powerful. As you can tell, you can really snap to almost anything here. If I had an icosphere, I could snap to that icosphere to the normal, and it's incredibly powerful what you can use mixing custom constraints, face-to-face and normals, And this is what I mean by the stat constraints that I haven't even had the time to really go about and really test this out. So that there is one of the custom constraints that I thought I would share with you. Of course, creating a custom constraint for something like Suzanne that all you're really wanting to do is have her face the other way of what her local axis is already set up to, which you will see if we go into this move here and select Suzanne, you will see that her Y is facing in this direction, and this is why we're facing inwards when we don't set up a custom constraint. There is a little workaround though. There's a new little hidden little thing, which is I for inversion. So let's go ahead and do what we've just done. We can hit G for moving. We're going to move on her origin. Let's select face centers and normals, and then let's have Suzanne facing inside. And you see currently she is facing inside because we've just snapped this direction. However, if we now hit I, we've now just flipped that axis. So now, without having to create any other custom constraints, we have twice the amount of basically constraints from a local by hitting I to be able to flip any axis that we were snapping to last time. So let's go Shift X and you can hit I and we're flipping our local axis in that way. And there you have it. That there is Cad Transforms, the one add-on that's made Blender completely possible for me to do precision modeling. I would love to hear what you think of it yourself, and if you think Blender is now worth doing some type of precision modeling. Yes, it's missing many things, but for something that's completely free and open source, I think it's something that might be viable. A huge thank you to my patrons. You guys are awesome and I love your support. And if you like the content I'm making here, I would love it if you consider supporting me too. Remember that I have a small precision Blender course going right this minute, right here, completely free on YouTube. If you're only interested in learning Blender for precision modeling, I'm teaching what I know as I go along to the best of my ability to show you how I use Blender for precision modeling. Thanks for watching, keep making, and let the quest continue.